Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to this special moment, and we want to say welcome to all of you who are focused and watching this program right now. It is a special program. We are going to be focusing on Kilum Forest. Our special guest this time is Dr. Ntaimah, an anthropologist and an author of so many books that talks about history, social life and other issues in the community. And this program is coming at a time where OCDA, that is Cultural and Development Association USA, they are organizing their convention. We shall be focusing on the historical issues of this forest. We shall be looking at the importance of this forest, the present situation of the forest, deforestation and other issues related to this. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you very much. The Uku Community Forest is among the first community forests in Cameroon. This forest has a unique ecosystem and is the largest remaining habitat for Banamans, Turako, a red-feathered bird that is only found in the Bamenda Highland region and is classified by IUCN Red List as endangered species. The Kilum Forest is an area of massive land which has extreme biodiversity. To keep the rainforest sustainable and available for the future, its control was handed over to the local population. The history of this forest reserve has witnessed flourishing and degrading periods that actually match with Cameroon's economic evolution. Economic hardship and desecration of the forest has ushered indescribable effects on the state of the environment of the Kilum Mountain Forest. Proper regeneration of the Kilum Mountain Forest cannot be effective without a retrospection on what the forest used to be, the history of the degradation process, the perception of the forest by the Uku people, the current state of the reserve, or factors leading to depletion, and the way forward or prospective. This massive forest was carved out as a protected area under E.M.L.Ndele's government far back in the late 1950s. Pressure from the colonial masters, the British, led to this initiative, whose aim was to preserve the huge forest that surrounded Uku by that time. This law demarcated the land massive, forest as a protected area. The direct consequences of the new law on the local people were glaring, for it effectively reduced undesirable practices, thereby limiting careless deforestation for farmland. The control of the forest from the beginning was handed over to the local authority. This is when Kwifon intervened and drew a demarcation between farmland and the forest reserve. The monitoring of the state of the reserve was ensured by Mabu, which kept on patrolling the limits and punishing defaulters. Through this process, the native authority maintained the forest intact for decades. Things changed for the worst when the control of the forest was withdrawn from Kwifon and handed over to a newly instituted body known as the Clan Council. This new regulatory body was perceived in Uku as individuals without statutory powers. Consequently, they were easily manipulated through patronage and kinship relations. Susceptibility was noticeable and encroachment into the forest was unprecedented. We acknowledge the enormous work initiated by BirdLife International in 1987, which marked an end to the unprecedented deforestation that nearly completely depleted the forest reserve. The Uku Community Managed Forest Initiative, a product of this international NGDO, was perceived by the local population as a panacea for the forest. This notwithstanding, the importance of this forest reserve to the Uku community can only be observed through the analysis of the Uku world view. The forest in Uku is perceived and referred to as Koko, which encompasses the following categories of vegetation: trees, Mkak, shrubs, Mkwaklese, herbs, Ebgi. Understanding the importance of each of these categories is already a positive step towards the constitution of clues to conservation strategies. Furthermore, Uku worldview considered the forest as the abode of the gods. The forest in Uku is perceived as home of the gods. Even within the belt-up area, most of the gods are found in galleries and waterfalls. To expound, all the waterfalls are surrounded by galleries. Lumutu and Mawes, as the highest deities of the land, are embedded in the forest. Lumutu in the Uku community today stands out as a connection line between the mountain forest and the built-up area. The forest is equally perceived in Uku as a protective shield. Uku people believe the forest is a source of healthy living. The forest is considered as a protective shield against infectious diseases. They consider the forest as a natural force against diseases. They believe the forest contains many curative plants that send their roots deep into the water table, thereby rendering the streams and springs potent and curative. Uku people equally perceive the forest as food reserve each year. The forest is a very reliable treasure to the Uku people. Nearly all the income-generating activities of the community are related to the forest. The forest directly offers fuel wood, building material, farm tools, and various foods like honey, brackets, mushrooms, animals, birds, toadstools, and insects. It is in this context that the forest is reserved as a chia, meaning a reserve where material is drawn. The forest is equally considered in Uku to be a medicinal plant reserve. The forest and medicine are considered to be the same thing in Uku, because without the forest, there is no medicine in Uku. It is said that 3/4 of therapeutic material is gotten from the forest. The forest is also perceived as directly connected to the availability of potable water and fresh air. The forest in Uku is equally perceived as fetish. You cannot kill somebody in the forest, you cannot steal in the forest, sexual intercourse is forbidden in the forest, etc., etc. Now we need to have a kind of retrospection on the degradation process, or what actually triggered depletion activities in the Kilum Mountain Forest Reserve. The first point we have to note is that the collapse of the coffee industry and the emergence of new cash crops, beans, and Irish potatoes actually changed the whole scenario. The fall of the price of coffee in the world market in the 1980s had a negative impact on Kilum Mountain Forest. Coffee plantations were abandoned and attention tilted towards the colonization of new arable lands on the slopes of the forest. This is when sizable portions of the forest were lost in favor of arable land, as coffee lost its value as a cash crop. It should be noted that before the economic crisis, coffee plantation and arable land were already in stiff competition for land. Another factor that we should consider was the opening up of roads to major cities, and especially Yaoundé. The construction of Bafoussam Yaoundé Highway in the early 80s had a serious impact on the demand for farmland along the slopes of the mountain forest. The demand for crops like beans and Irish potatoes skyrocketed due to access to steady market. Farmers consequently had no choice than to encroach into the forest reserve. This is actually when serious degradation took place. Again, the withdrawal of key fund and taking over control of the forest by the clan council is actually one of the factors that lead to depletion. As the demand for farmland was not enough, this period coincided with the withdrawal of key fund as the only credible traditional authority responsible for forest conservation. The regulation activities with regard to forest conservation were taken over by the clan council. Given the increased pressure emanating from patronage and kin relations, the clan council was involuntarily pushed into collection of tokens and enticements. Day after day, the demarcation line separating the forest and farmland kept on retreating. Now we need to look at the current state of the reserve. The current state of the reserve portrays the following activities. Constant encroachment by carvers. There is constant encroachment into the forest reserve by some unscrupulous carvers in search of carving tree species. The most common species hunted for carving are Scaphlera mani, or wasp, and ficus, and fungi. Constant poaching of important species, especially Pidgeum africana. Commercial harvesting of Pidgeum africana by international pharmaceutical industries has not been sustainable at all. There has been reports of harvesters not violating forest public holidays, down whole trees and peeling the barks of Pidgeum on the floor. Though an important income generating activity to the council and the forest neighboring communities, its management has not been sustainable. Grazing the interior of the forest. Grazing the interior of the forest is a new phenomenon in Uku. This occupational trend of activity came about as a consequence of depletion of grassland patches. The effects of this activity on natural plant nursery in the forest is enormous. Gradual dwindling of the forest surface area. Upon all the anthropic activities, farmland has an irreversible effect as it reduces the forest surface area. Understanding that a hungry man is an irrational man, we should not be expecting much from the local population. Faced with the survival instinct, they decided to jeopardize their protective shield for immediate income livelihoods. The way forward. Our plan of action should include the following. Understanding that we are not acting in a vacuum, community engagement should be foremost. Considering that our communities are the prime benefactors of conservation fruits, their engagement should be our primary priority. This entails working collaboratively with groups of people affiliated by geographic proximity and special interest to address issues affecting the well-being of these people. We should keep in mind that the community engagement process is a continuous process. It is a powerful vehicle for bringing about behavior change with regards to environmental conservation. We should equally focus on targeted actions such as the respect of traditional forest laws, the reinforcement of sustainable land use practices, the reinforcement of in situ conservation techniques. The last but not the least should be the encouragement of ex situ conservation to limit encroachment. This entails the transfer of generic material or species away from their original sites to shorten distance and facilitate accessibility of resources. Introduction of pasture development techniques to limit encroachment by graziers. Considering the distance already covered with regards to management of this forest reserve, considering the numerous hurdles cited above, we as a community should sit down, put resources and ideas together to chart the way forward for the future of this mountain forest, which is our common heritage.